The distress beacon screamed across 17 star systems, its desperate signal bouncing off relay stations and emergency networks like a dying animal's last cry. Ambassador Zelix of the Valerian Republic stood before the Galactic Council's emergency assembly, her crystalline skin flickering between deep purple and pale blue, colors that betrayed her terror despite her diplomatic training. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice trembling through the universal translator. "The Kythera swarm has broken through our outer defenses. 3 colonies have already fallen. Billions are dead or converted." The word converted hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud. Every species present knew what it meant. The Kythera didn't just kill, they assimilated, turning their victims into grotesque extensions of their hive mind. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 43 different species shifted uncomfortably in their seats, tendrils, or whatever appendages they possessed. The ethereal confluence whispered among themselves in frequencies only they could hear. The crystalline hegemony's delegates pulsed with worried light patterns. Even the stoic titanium collective showed signs of distress in their mechanical movements. Council Speaker Vorthak, an ancient being whose species had transcended physical form millennia ago, projected his consciousness into the chamber's central display. His voice resonated through telepathic channels directly into every delegate's mind. The Kythera swarm represents an existential threat not seen in over 10,000 years. Their last emergence nearly destroyed galactic civilization. Zelix nodded frantically. "Our military forces are overwhelmed. The Kythera adapt to every weapon we use, every strategy we employ. They learn from our tactics and turn them against us within hours. We need assistance, massive assistance, or the outer rim will fall within standard cycles." A delegate from the Aquatic Dominion raised a fin-like appendage. "What the Inner Core Defense Fleet? Surely they can respond." "Already deployed and failing," Vorthak replied grimly. "The Kythera have evolved beyond our previous encounters. They now possess the ability to corrupt our advanced AI systems, turning our own ships against us. 3 battle groups have already been compromised." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Languages merged into a cacophony of fear, clicking mandibles, harmonic tones, electromagnetic pulses, and pheromone releases. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. "There must be something," Zelix pleaded. "Some forgotten alliance, some mercenary group, some ancient weapon cache. We're not asking for charity. The Valerian Republic will pledge half our planetary resources to anyone who can help us stop this nightmare." Speaker Vorthak's presence dimmed as he accessed the Council's vast database. Seconds passed like eternities as desperate delegates held their breath. When he returned, his consciousness carried an odd resonance, something between hope and dread. "There is one possibility," he began slowly, "but it involves contact with a species that exists outside our normal diplomatic channels." The ethereal confluence representative, speaking through crystalline harmonics, asked, "Which species?" "We've cataloged every spacefaring civilization in this galaxy. Not every civilization chooses to join galactic society," Vorthak explained. "There are records of a species that declined membership in the Council over 2 centuries ago. They inhabit a single system on the outer edge of the galactic spiral. Designation: Sol 3, also called Terra by its inhabitants." A nervous ripple passed through the chamber. Species that refuse Council membership were usually either too primitive to be useful or too dangerous to be trusted. Sometimes both. "What do we know about them?" asked the crystalline hegemony's primary delegate. Vorthak hesitated. "Very little. They emerged from their homeworld approximately 300 standard years ago. When our first contact teams approached them for Council membership, they were politely declined. The species classified themselves as human and their homeworld as a death world by galactic standards." Murmurs of concern echoed through the chamber. Death worlds were rare, planets so hostile to life that any species evolving on them developed extreme survival capabilities. Most Deathworld species either died out quickly after achieving space travel or became so aggressive they had to be contained. They were offered limited trade agreements, Vorthack continued, but showed little interest in galactic commerce or politics. Our last official contact was over 150 years ago. Since then, they've maintained their isolation. The delegate from the Merchant Princes Guild spoke up. What kind of capabilities do they possess? Military technology? Fleet strength? Unknown. Our scouts reported that their technology appeared unconventional. They used chemical explosives and kinetic weapons long after most species had moved to energy-based systems. Their ships were heavily armored rather than relying on shields. But that information is centuries old. Zelix's skin had shifted to a desperate amber color. With respect, Speaker Vorthack, we're facing extinction. Even if these humans are primitive, any help might make a difference. Numbers matter against the swarm. There is something else, Vorthack added reluctantly. The human delegation that met with our first contact teams, they were unlike any species we'd encountered. They asked detailed questions about galactic conflicts, specifically about any entities that posed existential threats to multiple species. When informed about historical threats like the Kithra swarm, they seemed interested. Interested how? Pressed the Aquatic Dominion representative. They wanted to know everything about the swarm's tactics, biology, and previous defeats. Our contact teams assumed it was typical Death World paranoia, scanning for potential threats to their homeworld. But their questions were remarkably sophisticated, almost as if they were preparing for eventual conflict. The chamber fell silent. The implications were unsettling. Most species, when learning about galactic-scale threats, expressed fear or sought immediate alliance for protection. A species that appeared to be planning for such conflicts suggested a very different mindset. Could they have been preparing to help other species? Asked an optimistic delegate from the Peaceful Gardens Coalition. Vorthack's consciousness flickered, the equivalent of a shrug. Or preparing to ensure they could survive anything the galaxy might throw at them. Deathworld species often develop extreme self-preservation instincts. Zelix stepped forward, her desperation overriding diplomatic protocol. We're running out of options. The Kithara will reach the core systems within 50 standard cycles. If these humans can help, we must try. The speaker's presence brightened as he reached a decision. Very well. I will authorize an emergency diplomatic mission to the Sol system. Zelix, you will lead the delegation. Your people are most immediately threatened, giving you authority to negotiate terms. What terms are we authorized to offer? Zelix asked. Whatever it takes, Vorthack replied grimly. Full council membership, technology transfers, territorial grants, trade monopolies, anything within our power. The Kithara swarm represents a galactic extinction event. If this human species can help, cost becomes irrelevant. Within hours, a small diplomatic vessel departed from the Council's Central Space Station. Zelix led a carefully selected team, a military advisor from the Iron Legion, a technology specialist from the Synthesizer Collective, and a cultural analyst from the Empathic Federation. Their ship, the Harmony's Voice, was built for speed and equipped with the most advanced communication systems the Council possessed. As they entered hyperspace toward the mysterious Sol system, none of them could have anticipated what awaited them. They expected to find a primitive, isolated species that might contribute some additional forces to their desperate cause. They had no idea they were about to encounter something far more dangerous than the Kithara swarm, something that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. The journey to Sol took 12 standard days through hyperspace. During the trip, Zelix and her team reviewed everything the Council archives contain about humans and their homeworld. The information was sparse and often contradictory. Terra was classified as a class, 12 Death World, meaning it hosted environmental conditions that would kill most galactic species within hours. Extreme temperature variations, violent weather patterns, aggressive microbiology, and a surface gravity that exceeded Council safety standards by 40%. The fact that intelligent life had evolved there at all was considered remarkable by xenobiologists. The humans themselves were described as bipedal mammals with unusual physical capabilities. They could function in temperature ranges that spanned over 60 degrees, survived oxygen concentrations that varied dramatically, and showed resistance to biological toxins that would devastate other species. Most disturbing, they had evolved from predatory stock, something almost unheard of among spacefaring civilizations. "This is troubling," muttered Dr. KYNTH, the cultural analyst. Her species, the Empathic Federation, had evolved from herd animals and found predatory species deeply unsettling. Predators that achieve intelligence usually destroy themselves through violence long before developing space travel. Commander Thex of the Iron Legion, himself from a warrior culture, disagreed. Perhaps their predatory nature is exactly what we need against the swarm. Most Council species evolve from prey animals or cooperative communities. We think defensively. A predator species might approach the problem differently. Tech specialist Nuvex, whose cybernetic enhancements allowed him to process vast amounts of data simultaneously, had been analyzing human technological development. Their progression is indeed unusual. They developed nuclear weapons before achieving sustainable energy. They created military technology centuries before comparable civilian applications. And their space program appears to have been driven primarily by territorial expansion rather than exploration or trade. Territorial expansion? Zelix asked with concern. Every human colony appears to be heavily fortified. They didn't spread across their local systems to exploit resources or establish trade networks. They built fortress worlds. Each settlement is designed to function independently and defend itself indefinitely. Dr. KYNTH's empathic abilities were already picking up disturbing resonances. Are we making a terrible mistake? What if these humans are more dangerous than the Kithera? Commander Thex checked his tactical displays. We're about to find out. Dropping out of hyperspace in Sol system in 30 minutes. As the Harmony's voice decelerated back into normal space, its sensors immediately began detecting anomalies. The Sol system was far more active than their ancient record suggested. Massive industrial installations orbited every planet and major asteroid. Defensive platforms dotted the system like a three-dimensional minefield. And everywhere, ships moved with purpose and efficiency. "By the void," whispered Nuvex. "How many ships are out there?" His enhanced processing systems struggled to catalog what they were seeing. Thousands of vessels, ranging from small patrol craft to massive construction ships to warships that dwarfed anything in the Council's fleet. The humans hadn't just survived in isolation, they had thrived. "Incoming transmission," announced the ship's communication system. "Multiple sources. They're using primitive radio waves." The message came through in clear, unaccented Galactic standard. "Unknown vessel, you are entering human colonial space. State your identity, purpose, and diplomatic credentials. You have 30 seconds to comply before defensive measures are initiated." Zelix stepped to the communication console. "This is Ambassador Zelix of the Valerian Republic, representing the Galactic Council. We are here on an urgent diplomatic mission requesting assistance with a galactic emergency." A pause. Then, "Stand by, Ambassador. Escort ships are en route. You will be guided to Station Prime for processing. Any deviation from the escort course will be considered a hostile act." Minutes later, 12 sleek warships surrounded the Harmony's voice. The human vessels were unlike anything in the Council database. Angular, aggressive designs that seemed to promise violence even in peaceful formation. Their hulls were matte black, absorbing sensor scans rather than reflecting them. "Those aren't shields," Nuvex observed with growing alarm. "They're using physical armor. Incredibly thick physical armor. And I'm detecting weapons systems that I don't understand. These energy signatures don't match any known technology." Station Prime turned out to be a massive space habitat orbiting Terra's moon. As they approached, the scale became apparent. It was larger than most council member homeworlds, a vast rotating cylinder that could house millions of beings. Its surface bristled with defensive installations, industrial complexes, and docking bays that could accommodate ships of any size. The Harmony's voice was guided to a diplomatic docking bay, where they were met by a welcoming committee that defied every expectation. The humans were taller than the records indicated, broader, with dense muscle mass that suggested physical capabilities far exceeding galactic norms. They moved with fluid grace despite their size, and their eyes held an alertness that spoke of constant readiness for danger. The lead human stepped forward and extended a hand, apparently a greeting gesture. "Ambassador Zelix, welcome to Station Prime. I'm Director Sarah Chun, Head of Colonial Defense and External Relations. We understand you're here about the Kythera Swarm." Zelix blinked in surprise. "You know about the swarm?" Director Chen's smile was sharp. "Ambassador, we've been monitoring galactic communications for over 2 centuries. We know about every major threat, every political development, and every species that might someday pose a problem for humanity. The Kythera Swarm's recent emergence was expected." Expected? Zelix's voice rose in pitch. "Cyclical behavior pattern. They emerge approximately every 10,000 years when galactic population density reaches critical mass. They consume approximately 30% of spacefaring civilization, then retreat to their hidden bases to digest and reproduce. We've been studying them for decades, waiting for their return." The human's casual tone, while discussing galactic genocide, sent chills through the diplomatic team. Dr. Kawayanth's empathic senses were screaming danger signals, but there was something else. Underneath the human's predatory alertness was a strange, kind of protective instinct like predators guarding their territory. "Studying them?" Commander Thex asked. "How?" "We've recovered Kythera artifacts from ancient battle sites, analyzed their biology, technology, and tactics, run millions of simulations, built countermeasures. Your arrival means it's finally time to field test our preparations." Director Chun gestured for them to follow as she led them deeper into the station. The corridors were wide, well-lit, and filled with humans going about their business with purposeful efficiency. But Zelix noticed details that troubled her. Every human wore some form of protective equipment, even in civilian areas. Emergency shelters were marked every few meters, and there were weapon stations integrated seamlessly into the architecture. "You live like you're under siege," Dr. Kyth observed. "We live like we're alive," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "Death World evolution taught us that complacency equals extinction. Peace is a temporary condition between conflicts. The goal isn't to eliminate threats, it's to be ready when they arrive." They entered a vast conference chamber where dozens of humans waited. Military officers, scientists, engineers, and diplomats filled tiered seating around a central holographic display. As Zelix's team took their positions, the display activated to show a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with red indicators marking Kythera positions. "Before we discuss assistance," Director Chen announced, "you need to understand what you're asking for. You're not requesting help from a typical council species. You're asking Deathworlders to do what we do best: eliminate an existential threat through overwhelming violence." The holographic display shifted to show detailed schematics of Kythera bioships, their adaptive technologies, and assimilation processes. But overlaying each image were human analysis notes, weak points identified, and countermeasures designed. A human admiral, scarred and graying, stood to address the assembly. "Admiral Marcus Webb, Human Colonial Fleet. We've been preparing for this war for over a century. Our entire industrial capacity, our military doctrine, our colonial expansion, everything has been designed around one simple principle. When the Kythera return, humanity will be ready to end them permanently." Zelix felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. "End them? The Council seeks to repel the invasion, to force them back into hibernation until they return in another 10,000 years. Admiral Webb interrupted. How many cycles has the galaxy endured? How many billions of beings have died because previous civilizations chose to merely repel rather than solve the problem permanently? The room fell silent except for the subtle hum of station systems. The humans weren't offering to help with a defensive action. They were proposing genocide. We understand your moral concerns, Director Chen said softly. The Kithra were once a natural species like any other, but they made choices that transformed them into something that exists only to consume and assimilate other life. They cannot be reasoned with, reformed, or contained. They can only be stopped. Commander Thex, despite his warrior background, struggled with the implications. The scale you're suggesting, it would require military resources beyond anything the Council has ever assembled. Admiral Webb's smile was cold. Commander, you're thinking like someone who evolved in a safe galaxy. We're Deathworlders. We don't think about adequate resources. We think about overwhelming superiority. Show them. The holographic display changed to reveal the true scope of human preparation. Hidden shipyards throughout the Sol system and beyond. Massive fleets of warships built to specifications designed specifically for fighting the Kithra. Weapons that operated on principles the Council had never conceived. Fortress worlds that could serve as staging points for offensive operations across the galaxy. For 2 centuries, Admiral Webb continued, humanity has been preparing for exactly one war. Every resource, every technological development, every strategic decision has been made with the Kithra swarm in mind. We have built the largest military force in galactic history, and we built it for a single purpose. Nuvex's cybernetic systems were overloading, trying to process the scale of what they were seeing. The energy requirements alone. How do you power something like this? A human scientist stepped forward. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Director of Applied Physics. We've developed fusion technologies that can convert matter directly to energy at 97% efficiency. Every asteroid in our local cluster has been converted to either shipyard facilities or energy production. We're not just a spacefaring civilization. We're a galactic-scale military-industrial complex. Dr. Kynth was trembling now, her empathic abilities overwhelmed by the focused lethality she sensed from every human in the room. This is madness. You've turned your entire species into instruments of war. Director Chun turned to face her directly. Doctor, we've turned our species into instruments of survival. The universe is not a safe place. It contains things like the Kithra swarm, entities that exist only to consume and destroy. Someone has to be ready to face them. But the cost, Zelix whispered. The cost of preparation, Admiral Webb replied firmly, is always less than the cost of being unprepared. Your people are learning that now. Aren't they, Ambassador? The words hit like a physical blow. Zelix thought of the billions of Elorians already dead, already converted to grotesque extensions of the swarm's hive mind. The humans were right. The cost of being unprepared was civilization itself. What do you need from the Council? She asked quietly. Director Chen activated a new display showing star charts and resource requirements. Full access to Council space for fleet movement. Authority to engage Kithra forces without restriction. And complete operational control of all anti-swarm military activities. You want us to surrender command of our own forces? Commander Thex asked incredulously. Commander, Admiral Webb said patiently, your forces are losing. Your tactics are failing. Your technology is being adapted and turned against you. We're offering to solve your existential crisis, but we won't do it under committee management or political oversight. War's our specialty. Trust us to fight it our way, or watch your civilization die fighting it yours. The brutal honesty was shocking, but Zelix couldn't argue with the logic. The Council's military responses had failed catastrophically. Traditional galactic warfare doctrine proved useless against an enemy that adapted faster than new strategies could be implemented. What guarantees do we have, she asked slowly, that humanity won't become a threat to the Council after the Kithra are eliminated? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every human in the chamber turned to look at Director Chun, waiting for her response. None, she said simply. You have no guarantees except our word and your own judgment of our character. We could demand tribute, territorial concessions, or political submission as payment for our assistance. Instead, we're offering to eliminate your existential threat in exchange for the resources needed to do the job efficiently. Why? Dr. KYNTH asked. Why help us at all? Director Chun was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Because we're predators, doctor, but we're not monsters. We protect what we consider ours. And after 2 centuries of monitoring galactic civilization, we've come to consider this galaxy ours. The Kythera swarm threatens our territory and our potential future neighbors. That makes them our problem. Admiral Webb added, and because eliminating existential threats is what Deathworlders do. It's what we evolved for. The galaxy has enjoyed relative peace for millennia because it never developed anything truly dangerous. We come from a world where existential threats were a daily reality. We know how to end them. Zelix looked at her team, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their expressions. They had come seeking help and found something far more complex, a species that had transformed itself into a weapon specifically designed to fight the one enemy that threatened galactic civilization. The humans weren't offering salvation, they were offering surgery. Brutal, efficient, and permanent. I need to consult with the Council, she said finally. Of course, Director Chen replied. But, Ambassador, understand that every day you delay is another day the swarm grows stronger and spreads farther. They're not waiting for your decision. As if summoned by her words, an urgent communication arrived from Council space. The message was brief and horrifying. 3 more systems have fallen. The swarm is accelerating its advance. Estimated time until core worlds are threatened, 30 standard days. Zelix closed her eyes, feeling the weight of billions of lives in her decision. When she opened them, she found Director Chen watching her with what might have been sympathy. This is not the help we expected to find, Zelix admitted. Ambassador, Chun said softly. We didn't come looking for help. You came looking for salvation. Help will be a few extra ships and some tactical support. Salvation requires eliminating the threat entirely. The question is, do you want your civilization to survive, or do you want to feel good about how you saved it? The choice was starker than any diplomat should face. Accept the humans' offer and potentially unleash something as dangerous as the Kythera themselves. Refuse and watch galactic civilization face extinction. But as Zelix thought of the converted billions, the assimilated children, and the swarm's inexorable advance toward the core worlds, she realized there was really no choice at all. I'll recommend to the Council that we accept your terms, she said quietly. Director Chen nodded. Signal when you have their authorization. We'll begin fleet movement immediately upon confirmation. How quickly can you respond? Zelix asked. Admiral Webb checked his tactical displays. Our advanced fleets can be in position within 10 standard days. Full deployment will take 30 days. The Kythera won't know what hit them. As the diplomatic meeting concluded and Zelix prepared to return to Council space with humanity's terms, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just made a deal with something far more dangerous than the Kythera swarm. The humans had spent centuries preparing for this war, transforming their entire civilization into an instrument of calculated violence. But perhaps, she thought grimly, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The journey back to Council space would give her time to prepare her arguments, to find the right words to convince 43 different species to trust their survival to a race of death world predators. It wouldn't be easy, but the alternative was extinction. As the Harmony's voice departed Station Prime, Zelix watched through the viewport as human warships continued their endless patrols, ready for a war they had been anticipating for over 2 centuries. For the first time since the Kythera had emerged from their long slumber, she felt something approaching hope. It was a cold, sharp hope that promised survival through overwhelming violence. But It was hope. Nonetheless, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of Zelix's return. The central chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 43 species gathered to hear the human proposal. Speaker Vorthak's consciousness filled the space with urgent intensity as Zelix presented her findings. "The humans will assist us," she announced, her crystalline skin shifting to cautious amber. "But their terms are unprecedented." The holographic displays around the chamber showed the intelligence data the humans had shared, detailed analyses of Kithra biology, technology, and tactical patterns accumulated over centuries of preparation. The assembled delegates absorbed the information with growing amazement and alarm. "They've been studying the swarm for how long?" demanded the ethereal confluence representative. "Over 200 standard years," Zelix replied. "Their entire civilization has been structured around preparing for this conflict. They call it the long preparation." Council Speaker Vorthak projected concern. "Show us their military capabilities." The display shifted to reveal the true scope of human military preparation. Hidden shipyards throughout human space, fleets of vessels designed specifically for fighting the Kithra, weapons systems that operated on principles unknown to Council science. The numbers were staggering. "They have built the largest military force in galactic history," Commander Thex reported, his voice carrying professional respect despite his obvious discomfort. "Their ships use physical armor instead of energy shields. Their weapons are based on kinetic and fusion technologies rather than plasma or particle beams. And their tactics, they don't think defensively at all." The crystalline hegemony's delegate pulsed with worried patterns. "You said their terms were unprecedented. Specify." Zelix's skin shifted to deep purple, the color of serious concern. "They demand complete operational control of all anti-swarm military operations. Council forces would serve under human command. They require unrestricted access to Council space for fleet movements. And they want authority to engage the Kithra without any political oversight." The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Species that had maintained their independence for millennia balked at surrendering military command to an unknown power. The Merchant Princes Guild worried about trade disruption. The Peaceful Gardens Coalition questioned the moral implications of unleashing Deathworld predators on any enemy, even the Kithra. "This is madness," declared the Aquatic Dominion representative. "We would be trading one existential threat for another. How do we know these humans won't simply replace the Kithra as galactic conquerors?" Dr. KYNTH, still trembling from her empathic exposure to human lethality, spoke softly. "They are unlike anything we've encountered. Their entire mindset is predatory, focused on eliminating threats through overwhelming force. I sense no desire for conquest in the traditional sense, but their definition of necessary action could include anything they perceive as threatening, including us eventually," muttered the Iron Legion's primary delegate. Speaker Vorthak's consciousness darkened as he processed the implications. "Yet we face immediate extinction if the Kithra advance continues." 3 more systems fell while this assembly convened. The swarm now controls 17% of the outer rim and is accelerating toward the core worlds. A new voice entered the discussion. Admiral Nexus of the Combined Fleet, the Council's highest military authority. His species, the Void Walkers, had evolved in the vacuum of space and possessed an intuitive understanding of large-scale military operations. "I have reviewed the human tactical assessments," he announced through the Chamber's communication systems. "Their analysis of Kithra adaptation patterns is more sophisticated than anything our strategists have produced. They have identified weaknesses we never recognized and developed countermeasures that bypass the swarm's adaptive capabilities entirely." "Explain," ordered Speaker Vorthak. "The Kithra adapt to energy-based weapons by analyzing their quantum signatures and developing immunity. But kinetic weapons, physical projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds, cannot be adapted to in the same way. Physics is physics, regardless of biological enhancement." A steel projectile moving at 90% light speed will destroy any matter encounters, no matter how the target has been modified. The Admiral continued. Similarly, the swarm adapts to our ship designs by studying captured vessels and developing specific countermeasures. But the humans have built ships unlike anything in our database. Their vessels are essentially flying fortresses designed for close-range combat. The Kithara have no reference point for defending against their tactics. Nuvex, the technology specialist, have been analyzing the human technical data. Their industrial capacity is beyond anything we comprehended. They have converted entire star systems into manufacturing centers. Their resource allocation is incomprehensible. 93% of their total civilization output has been dedicated to military preparation. That level of militarization is unsustainable, protested the Economic Development Consortium representative. No civilization can maintain such resource allocation without social collapse. Unless, Speaker Vorthak observed grimly, that civilization evolved specifically to survive unsustainable conditions. Deathworld species develop extreme capabilities because their environment demands it. Perhaps humans have simply applied that same survival imperative to interstellar warfare. The debate continued for hours as delegates struggled with an impossible choice. Accept the human terms and surrender control to an unknown predatory species, or maintain independence and face extinction at the hands of the Kithara swarm. Finally, Ambassador Zelix requested permission to address the assembly directly. As she stood in the central speaking circle, her skin shifted to patterns of desperate determination. "Honored delegates," she began, "we are debating the terms of our salvation as if we have multiple options. We do not. The Kithara swarm has broken through every defense we've deployed. Our fleets are being destroyed or converted. Our colonies are falling faster than we can evacuate them. In 30 standard days, they will reach the core worlds." She gestured to the tactical displays showing the swarm's relentless advance. "We came to the humans asking for help, expecting them to provide ships and soldiers to supplement our forces. Instead, we found something far more significant, a species that has spent centuries preparing for exactly this war. They don't want to help us fight the Kithara. They want to end the Kithara. And if they succeed," asked the Ethereal Confluence representative, "what prevents them from turning their war machine against us?" Zelix's response was quiet but firm. "The same thing that prevented them from attacking us during the 2 centuries they've been monitoring our communications and studying our capabilities. They could have conquered the galaxy at any time during the past 200 years. They chose not to. That suggests their intentions align with their stated goals." Commander Thex stood to support her argument. "I've studied their military doctrine extensively. Everything they've built is designed specifically to fight the Kithara swarm. Their ships, their weapons, their tactics, all optimized for destroying bioadaptive enemies. This is not a conquest force. It's an extermination force built for a single purpose, which makes them even more dangerous," Dr. KYNTH pointed out. "A species that can build something like this, that can dedicate their entire civilization to preparing for a single war. What happens when that war ends? What do they do with all that focused lethality?" The question hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud. No one had an answer, because no one had ever encountered a species like humanity before. Speaker Vorthak's consciousness expanded as he reached a decision. The immediate threat must take priority. Authorization vote. Do we accept human terms and surrender operational control to prevent galactic extinction? The vote was called species by species. Some delegates voted immediately. Others requested time to consult with their homeworlds. But as reports continued arriving of new Kithara conquests, the urgency became undeniable. When the final tallies were counted, 31 species voted in favor of accepting human terms. 12 voted against, preferring to face extinction rather than surrender sovereignty to Deathworld predators. The motion passed. "Signal the humans," Speaker Vorthak ordered. "Inform them that the Galactic Council accepts their terms and requests immediate intervention." Zelix felt a mixture of relief and terror as she transmitted the Council's acceptance to Sol System. Within minutes, she received a response from Director Chun. Authorization confirmed. Fleet deployment begins immediately. Expect contact from Admiral Webb within 6 hours for tactical coordination. The response included detailed requirements for Council support, staging areas for human fleets, supply routes for their unique logistical needs, and communication protocols for coordinating joint operations. The humans had prepared for everything, including the politics of their intervention. 6 hours later, Admiral Marcus Webb's image appeared on the Council's main communication screen. Behind him, the organized chaos of a massive military operation was visible. Officers coordinating fleet movements, technicians checking weapon systems, and displays showing the deployment of forces across multiple star systems. Council Speaker Vorthak, Admiral Webb began without preamble. Human colonial fleet stands ready to commence operations against the Kythera swarm. We require immediate intelligence updates on current swarm positions and Council fleet locations to avoid friendly fire incidents. Provided, Vorthak replied, transmitting the requested data instantly. What is your operational timeline? Advanced elements are already en route. Fast attack squadrons will engage swarm forces in the Valerian frontier within 48 hours. Main battle groups will arrive in 10 days for sustained operations. Full deployment, including our heavy siege fleets, will be complete in 30 days. The speed of human response was breathtaking. Most Council military operations required weeks of planning and preparation. The humans were treating this as a minor scheduling adjustment. What do you require from Council forces? Admiral Nexus asked. Stay out of our way, Webb replied bluntly. Your ships are vulnerable to swarm adaptation. Your tactics are predictable. Your weapons are ineffective. Council forces will provide logistical support, evacuation assistance for surviving populations, and mop-up operations in secured systems. Leave the actual fighting to us. The dismissive tone rankled several military representatives, but Admiral Nexus recognized professional competence when he encountered it. Understood. What can you tell us about your operational strategy? Admiral Webb's expression grew cold. We're going to hurt them. For 2 centuries, the Kythera have adapted to every tactic the galaxy has thrown at them. They've never faced anything like human warfare. We don't adapt our tactics to theirs. We force them to adapt to ours. And our tactics are designed to ensure that adaptation is impossible. Explain, demanded Speaker Vorthak. The swarm expects energy weapons, shield technology, and defensive tactics. They're prepared for long-range engagements using predictable technologies. Instead, they're going to face kinetic weapons with no quantum signature to analyze, armor that cannot be penetrated by their bioweapons, and close-range combat tactics that turn every engagement into a brawl. Webb activated a tactical display showing human ship formations. Council fleets fight like prey animals, maintain distance, use superior technology, avoid direct confrontation. We fight like apex predators. We close to combat range, overwhelm their defenses, and destroy everything that moves. The human ships on the display moved in patterns unlike anything in Council tactical doctrine. Instead of maintaining formation and engaging at optimal range, they scattered into small, aggressive units that attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously. Their approach was chaotic, violent, and completely unpredictable. The Kythera adapt by learning patterns, Webb continued. We're going to ensure there are no patterns to learn. Every engagement will be different. Every attack will use different approaches. By the time they begin to understand one tactic, we'll have moved on to 3 others. Dr. Kawyanth, monitoring the discussion through empathic channels, shuddered at the focused aggression radiating from the human admiral. This is not warfare as any civilized species practices it. No, Webb agreed without apology. This is death world warfare. This is how you fight when losing means extinction and victory requires total elimination of the threat. You don't fight to defeat the enemy. You fight to ensure they never threaten anyone again. The first reports from a Valerian frontier arrived 18 hours later. The human advanced squadrons had engaged Kythera forces at the edge of the besieged system, and the results defied every expectation. Contact with human fast attack units confirmed. Transmitted Captain Valerian of the surviving Council observation post. I don't understand what I'm seeing. The humans aren't trying to establish firing lines or maintain formation integrity. They're charging directly into swarm formations at maximum acceleration. The tactical feed showed a sight that would haunt Council military analysts for generations. Human ships, smaller and more heavily armored than anything in the Council fleet, dove straight into the heart of Kythera bioformations. Instead of exchanging fire at range, they closed to distances measured in kilometers and began systematically destroying everything around them. Kythera bioships are attempting to adapt to human weapons signatures. Captain Valerian continued, his voice filled with amazement. Adaptation failing. Human kinetic weapons are producing different results with each impact. The swarm cannot predict or counter purely physical attacks. But the most shocking element wasn't the weapons, it was the tactics. The humans weren't just fighting the Kythera, they were hunting them. Small human craft pursued fleeing bioships through asteroid fields and nebulae, ensuring that nothing escaped to report tactical information back to the swarm. They're not just winning, Admiral Nexus observed with professional awe. They're achieving complete tactical surprise. The Kythera have no reference point for understanding human combat doctrine. The engagement lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the human squadrons had completely eliminated a Kythera formation that had been systematically destroying Council forces for weeks. Not a single bioship escaped. The humans achieved 100% kill ratios with minimal losses. Valerian's system is secure, Admiral Webb reported to the Council. Kythera forces eliminated. Beginning sweep for survivors and hidden assets. Council evacuation ships may begin recovery operations. The speed and completeness of the victory was unprecedented. In 6 hours, the humans had accomplished what Council forces had failed to achieve in months of fighting. But the reports from rescued Council personnel revealed details that were both encouraging and deeply disturbing. They don't just destroy Kythera ships, reported a survivor from the medical frigate Healing Light. They board them. Human soldiers in powered armor invade bioships and kill everything inside, then plant charges to ensure total destruction. I watched them breach a swarm conversion facility and eliminate hundreds of drones in close combat. The survivor's voice carried trauma that went beyond the typical stress of warfare. They move like nothing I've ever seen. Fast, coordinated, absolutely ruthless. And when they found converted Council personnel, they didn't hesitate. They killed them instantly, cleanly, without emotion. They said it was mercy. Speaker Vorthak processed this information with growing concern. The humans weren't just defeating the Kythera. They were demonstrating capabilities that bordered on incomprehensible. Their soldiers could board enemy vessels and fight hand-to-hand against bio-enhanced creatures. Their decision-making process included calculated mercy killings of assimilated allies. Are we witnessing the salvation of galactic civilization? He wondered aloud. Or its replacement by something equally dangerous? The question remained unanswered as reports continued arriving from across the frontier. System after system was being liberated by human forces moving with clockwork precision and overwhelming violence. The Kythera swarm, which had seemed unstoppable just days before, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy it could not understand or adapt to. But with each victory, the Council delegates grew more concerned about their saviors. The humans didn't fight like any civilized species. They fought like natural disasters given intelligence and purpose. They were saving the galaxy through methods that most Council species found deeply disturbing. Admiral Webb's next communication arrived as the human main battle groups approached the former Kythera stronghold at Nexus Prime, a massive bioship construction facility that had been converting captured Council vessels into swarm assets. Council Command, Webb announced, we're beginning assault operations on Nexus Prime. Intelligence suggests this facility contains approximately 50 million assimilated beings from various Council species. Be advised that rescue operations may not be feasible. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. 50 million converted Council citizens were trapped in that facility, their minds enslaved by Kythera biomodifications. Traditional rescue would be impossible. The assimilated beings have been transformed into extensions of the swarm's hive mind. Admiral, Zelix asked desperately, "Is there any way to save them?" Webb's pause was telling. "We're going to try something unprecedented. Our science teams believe they may have developed a way to disrupt Kythera neural control without killing the host organism. But, Ambassador, the success rate in our simulations is less than 12%. And even successful subjects show severe psychological trauma. Try anyway," Speaker Vorthak ordered. "Any chance of saving them is worth the attempt." "Understood. But be aware that if the rescue attempt fails, we will not allow those beings to remain under swarm control. Mercy killings may be necessary." The cold calculation in Webb's voice reminded everyone that their saviors operated under a moral framework entirely different from Council norms. The humans would attempt rescue, but they would not hesitate to kill 50 million beings if that was necessary to prevent their continued suffering under Kythera control. The assault on Nexus Prime began 12 hours later, and the Council watched in horrified fascination as human warfare doctrine played out on the largest scale yet. Instead of a single coordinated attack, human forces struck from 17 different vectors simultaneously, each using completely different tactics. Some battle groups used massive kinetic bombardment to shatter the facility's outer defenses. Others employed what appeared to be viral warfare, releasing engineered organisms that attacked Kythera biotechnology specifically. Still others used gravitational manipulation to create localized space-time distortions that rendered swarm adaptive defenses useless. "They're not just using different weapons," Admiral Nexus observed with growing amazement. "They're using different laws of physics. How is this possible?" Nuvex, monitoring the human technical signatures, provided the answer. "They've developed multiple independent technological paths specifically for this war. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological weapons, gravitational weapons, temporal manipulation, everything designed to ensure the Kythera cannot adapt to their full arsenal simultaneously." The battle raged for 36 hours. When it ended, Nexus Prime had been completely destroyed, but the human science teams had achieved something unprecedented in the history of Kythera conflicts. They had successfully severed neural control links for over 6 million assimilated beings. The rescued individuals required extensive medical and psychological treatment, but they were alive, conscious, and free from swarm control. For the first time since the crisis began, the Council had proof that the Kythera's grip on their victims could be broken. But the cost of victory was sobering. The remaining 44 million assimilated beings had been too deeply integrated into the swarm's bionetwork to save. The humans had killed them all in a single, coordinated action that Speaker Vorthak could only describe as mercifully efficient. "Admiral Webb," Vorthak transmitted, "your forces have achieved something the Council thought impossible. How do we proceed?" "We proceed by ending this," Webb replied grimly. Nexus Prime was a secondary facility. Our intelligence has located the primary Kythera base, the source point from which this entire invasion was launched. We're going to destroy it and everything connected to it. The human admiral's next words carried implications that would reshape galactic civilization forever. "Speaker Vorthak, we need to discuss what happens after we eliminate the swarm. Because once we finish this war, humanity will have demonstrated capabilities that change the balance of power in this galaxy permanently. We need to decide what kind of relationship our species will have going forward." The conversation that followed would determine not just the fate of the Kythera swarm, but the future structure of galactic civilization itself. The humans had proven they could save the galaxy from extinction, but the question remained, What would they do with that power once the immediate threat was eliminated? As the human fleets continued their systematic dismantlement of Kythera forces across the Outer Rim, Council delegates began to understand that they hadn't just requested military assistance. They had invited apex predators to demonstrate their capabilities on a galactic stage. The question was no longer whether humanity could defeat the Kythera swarm. The question was what the galaxy would look like when they finished the intelligence briefing that changed everything came from an unexpected source. A rescued Kythera victim whose mind had been only partially integrated into the swarm network. Dr. Sarah Chun, the human neural specialist who had developed the de-assimilation procedures, made the discovery while treating the traumatized survivor. The patient's memories contained detailed information about Kythera command structures, Dr. Chun reported to the Joint Council Human Strategic Committee. But what we found goes far beyond anything we expected. The current invasion isn't random. It's being directed by something the swarm calls the Prime Nexus. Admiral Webb leaned forward in his chair aboard the command vessel Retribution. Around the conference room, holographic projections of council delegates and human commanders waited for details that could change the entire war. Clarify Prime Nexus, Speaker Vorthak requested. Dr. Chin activated a neural mapping display showing the rescued victims' extracted memories. The Kythera aren't just a hive mind. They're a layered hierarchy. Individual drones serve bioships. Bioships serve sector commanders. Sector commanders serve regional coordinators. And all of them serve something called the Prime Nexus. We assumed the swarm was distributed intelligence, Admiral Nexus admitted. No central command structure to target. That assumption was deliberately fostered, Dr. Chun continued. The Prime Nexus is hidden, heavily defended, and absolutely critical to swarm operations. It's not just a command center. It's the repository for all accumulated Kythera knowledge from their previous emergence cycles. The implications hit the assembled commanders simultaneously. If the humans could locate and destroy the Prime Nexus, they wouldn't just defeat this invasion. They would eliminate the swarm's ability to launch future campaigns. Location, Admiral Webb asked curtly. Unknown, but the patient's memories contain navigation references. Our analysis suggests the Prime Nexus is located somewhere in the void reaches, the empty space between galactic arms where no council species has ever established permanent settlements. The void reaches represented the galaxy's most hostile environment. No stars, no planets, no resources except the occasional rogue asteroid. It was the perfect hiding place for something that wanted to remain hidden for millennia between invasions. Scanning the entire void reaches would take decades, pointed out Commander Thex. Do we have any way to narrow the search? Dr. Chun smiled grimly. Actually, we do. The patient's memories include something unprecedented, a complete map of Kythera supply lines from their current forward positions back to the Prime Nexus. If we can trace those routes, we could track them home, Admiral Webb finished. How long do we need for analysis? 72 hours for complete route mapping. But, Admiral, there's something else. The memories show that the Prime Nexus isn't just defended, it's massive. The facility is larger than most star systems, built around artificial gravity wells created from collapsed matter. Destroying it will require more firepower than anything the galaxy has ever seen deployed. The room fell silent as the scale of the challenge became clear. The humans had proven they could defeat Kythera forces in conventional engagements, but assaulting a fortress the size of Star System was beyond even their capabilities. How massive are we talking? Asked Nuvex, his cybernetic systems already calculating resource requirements. The Prime Nexus consists of 17 interconnected biostations arranged around an artificial black hole. Each station is approximately the size of a large moon. The entire complex contains an estimated 50 billion Kythera entities, including their oldest and most advanced forms. Admiral Webb processed this information with the calm expression of someone who had prepared for exactly this scenario. 50 billion targets, 17 fortified positions, artificial black hole providing unlimited energy. This is why we built the Siege Fleet. Siege Fleet, Ambassador Zelix asked. For the first time since the crisis began, Admiral Webb smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. For 2 centuries, humanity has prepared for this war under the assumption that the Kithra would eventually have to be eliminated at their source. We built 3 separate fleets. The fast attack squadrons you've seen in action, the main battle groups currently securing liberated systems, and the Siege Fleet. The holographic display changed to show vessel specifications that defied every council understanding of military engineering. The Siege Fleet consisted of ships that weren't so much starships as mobile weapons platforms. Massive constructs built around single-purpose systems designed for destroying fortified positions. Planetary crackers, Admiral Webb explained matter-of-factly. Ships designed to shatter worlds. Each vessel carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface. We built them specifically for attacking Kithra strongholds. How many? Whispered Dr. KYNTH. Her empathic abilities overwhelmed by the focused destructive intent radiating from the human plans. 47 active vessels, with another 15 in construction. Each one represents the combined industrial output of an entire star system over several decades. The scale was incomprehensible. Humanity had dedicated the resources of dozens of star systems to building weapons capable of destroying worlds, all in preparation for a war that might never come. The level of commitment was either admirable or terrifying, depending on one's perspective. Even with such firepower, pointed out Admiral Nexus, assaulting a facility that size would result in massive casualties. The defenses alone will be formidable, Webb agreed. But we have advantages the Kithra don't expect. They've built their defenses around the assumption that attackers will use conventional tactics and technologies. We're going to introduce them to some concepts they've never encountered, such as, Speaker Vorthak inquired. Admiral Webb activated a new display showing what appeared to be stellar engineering on an unprecedented scale. Weaponized stars. We're going to drag dying suns to the battle and use them as ammunition. The statement was so outrageous that several delegates assumed it was metaphorical. It wasn't. Our gravitational manipulation technology allows us to alter stellar positions over extended periods, explained Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, joining the briefing from the Human Research Division. We've been moving dead and dying stars into strategic positions throughout the galaxy for over 50 years. Currently, we have 6 stellar masses positioned within striking distance of the void reaches. You've been moving stars, Zelix repeated slowly, as a military tactic? Death world thinking, Webb replied without apology. When conventional weapons aren't sufficient, you don't build bigger conventional weapons. You find ways to use physics itself as a weapon. Dying stars contain enough energy to sterilize entire regions of space. Properly directed, they can overwhelm any defensive system. The human approach to warfare was revealing itself to be even more extreme than anyone had imagined. They didn't just build weapons. They conscripted fundamental forces of nature to serve their military objectives. The plan, Webb continued, is to position our siege fleet around the prime nexus while simultaneously maneuvering 3 dying stars into firing positions. The stellar masses will provide enough energy to disrupt the artificial black hole sustaining the Kithra facility. Once their power source is compromised, we eliminate the individual stations. And the 50 billion Kithra entities? Asked Commander Thex. Casualties of war, Webb replied coldly. The prime nexus represents the sum total of Kithra knowledge, technology, and reproductive capacity. Eliminating it ensures they can never threaten galactic civilization again. The cost is unfortunate, but necessary. Dr. KYNTH was trembling now, her empathic abilities picking up the absolute certainty in Admiral Webb's mind. The humans weren't planning a military operation. They were planning an extinction event. They intended to eliminate the Kithra swarm so completely that no trace of their civilization would survive. There has to be another way, she pleaded. Some method that doesn't require genocide on such a scale. Dr. Webb said quietly, the Kithara have conducted this same cycle for millions of years. Every 10,000 years, they emerge, consume 30% of galactic civilization, then retreat to reproduce and plan their next emergence. How many species have they driven to extinction? How many billions have died in their previous invasions? He activated historical displays showing the archaeological evidence of previous Kithara emergences. Dead worlds stripped of all organic matter. The fossilized remains of civilizations that had fought and lost against the swarm. Species that existed only as genetic fragments in Kithara bioarchives. This cycle ends now, Webb continued. Not because we're cruel, but because we're the first civilization with the capability to end it permanently. The galaxy will be safe from the Kithara because the Kithara will cease to exist. Speaker Vorthack's consciousness darkened as he contemplated the moral implications. Are we witnessing the salvation of galactic civilization or participating in atrocities that equal those we seek to prevent? That depends, Admiral Webb replied, on whether you believe the elimination of an existential threat constitutes an atrocity. The Kithara cannot be reformed, contained, or negotiated with. They exist only to consume and assimilate other life forms. Eliminating them is no different from eliminating any other form of hostile natural disaster. The debate that followed would be remembered as one of the most significant moral discussions in galactic history. Representatives from 43 species argued about the ethics of genocide against a species that itself committed genocide as a biological imperative. Some delegates supported the human plan as necessary for galactic survival. Others argued that using such extreme methods made them no better than the enemy they fought. But while the council debated, Admiral Webb received the intelligence analysis from Dr. Chen's team. The route mapping was complete, and the location of the prime nexus had been determined. Council command, Webb announced, interrupting the ongoing debate. We have target coordinates. The prime nexus is located in grid sector 7729 Delta, approximately 40,000 light-years from the galactic rim. Our siege fleet can reach the target in 18 standard days. Admiral, Speaker Vorthack said formally, the Council has not yet authorized the use of stellar weapons against the prime nexus. Webb's expression didn't change. Speaker, with respect, the Council authorized operational control of all anti-swarm activities. The elimination of the prime nexus falls under that authority. The only question is whether Council forces will participate in the operation or observe from a safe distance. The blunt statement clarified humanity's position. They weren't requesting permission. They were informing the Council of their intentions. The operation would proceed with or without Council approval. You're forcing us to become complicit in xenocide, accused the Peaceful Gardens Coalition representative. I'm forcing you to choose between xenocide and extinction, Webb corrected. The Kithara will not stop their expansion because we ask nicely. They will not negotiate a peaceful resolution. They will continue consuming galactic civilization until someone stops them permanently. We are prepared to be that someone. Ambassador Zelix, whose people had suffered most under the swarm's initial assault, spoke quietly. Admiral Webb, if humanity proceeds with this operation and succeeds, what guarantees does the Council have that human stellar weapons won't be turned against us in the future? It was the question everyone wanted answered, but had been afraid to ask directly. If humans could move stars as weapons against the Kithara, what prevented them from using the same weapons against Council species? Webb considered his response carefully. Ambassador, I can offer no guarantees except our track record. Humanity has possessed the capability to destroy Council civilization for over a century. We have chosen not to use that capability, even when we had tactical advantages that would have made conquest simple. Our species fights existential threats to protect our territory, which now includes this galaxy. We don't conquer for resources or political control. Because you don't need to, pointed out the Merchant Princes Guild representative. Your industrial capacity exceeds the combined output of all Council species. You have no economic incentive for conquest. Exactly, Webb agreed. We became economically and militarily self-sufficient specifically to avoid conflicts over resources. The only thing that motivates human military action is existential threats to our definition of civilization. The Kithara qualify. Council species do not. Dr. Kawayanth, despite her fear of human intentions, found herself believing the Admiral's words. Her empathic abilities detected no deception, no hidden conquest agenda. The humans genuinely viewed themselves as galactic defenders rather than potential conquerors. But that raised an equally disturbing question. If humans saw themselves as galactic protectors, what would they do if they perceived Council actions as threatening to galactic stability? The vote, Speaker Vorthak announced, is whether to formally authorize the human stellar weapon deployment against the Kithara Prime Nexus. All in favor. The count was closer than the previous authorization, 28 in favor, 15 opposed. Several species abstained entirely, unwilling to explicitly authorize what amounted to organized extinction of another sapient species. Authorization granted, Speaker Vorthak announced. Admiral Webb, the Galactic Council formally authorizes the use of any necessary force to eliminate the Kithara threat permanently. Acknowledged, Webb replied. Siege fleet deployment begins immediately. Council observation ships are welcome to witness the operation from a safe distance of no less than 5 light-years from the target zone. As the briefing concluded and Webb prepared to lead humanity's ultimate military operation, Dr. Chun made one final discovery in the rescued victims' memories, something that would change how everyone viewed the coming battle. Admiral, she announced urgently, we found additional intelligence. The Prime Nexus isn't just a military command center. It's also the Kithara's reproduction facility. The complex contains millions of developing bioships and billions of larvae in various stages of maturation. The implications were staggering. The Prime Nexus wasn't just the brain of the swarm. It was also their nursery. Destroying it would eliminate not just the current invasion force, but every future generation of Kithara. Estimated total population at the facility? Webb asked. Including developing organisms, approximately 500 billion entities. The number hung in the air like an indictment. 500 billion lives that would be ended in a single military operation. The scale moved beyond warfare into something approaching cosmic sterilization. Admiral, Zelix asked quietly, does this change your assessment of the operation? Webb's answer would define humanity's role in galactic civilization for centuries to come. Ambassador, it makes the operation more necessary, not less. The Prime Nexus represents the sum total of Kithara reproductive capacity. Eliminating it ensures this threat never emerges again. The numbers are staggering, but the alternative is the eventual extinction of every other form of life in the galaxy. He paused, looking directly at each delegate through the holographic display. In 18 days, this will be over. The galaxy will either be free of the Kithara threat forever, or humanity will have failed and the swarm will continue its expansion. There is no middle ground. As the human siege fleet departed for the void reaches, carrying weapons capable of killing stars, and the determination to use them, the Council delegates struggled with a realization that would haunt galactic civilization. They had asked for help against an existential threat and received exactly what they requested. The question was whether they could live with the methods their saviors employed and what those methods implied about humanity's future role in galactic affairs. In 18 days, they would have their answer. The galaxy would either witness the salvation of civilization through overwhelming violence, or discover that they had invited something equally dangerous to demonstrate its capabilities on an unprecedented scale. Admiral Webb's final transmission before entering hyperspace was characteristically direct. Council Command, when we return, the Kithara swarm will no longer exist. What happens next depends on how the galaxy chooses to respond to that reality. The meaning was clear. Humanity would eliminate the immediate threat, but the long-term relationship between humans and the rest of galactic civilization remained to be determined. The Council had gained the most powerful allies in galactic history, but they had also learned that those allies were capable of casual extinction events when they deemed such action necessary. The next 18 days would be the longest in galactic history, as every species waited to learn whether they had been saved by heroes or had witnessed the emergence of something that would reshape the galaxy through methods they could barely comprehend. The die was cast. The siege fleet was in motion. And somewhere in the void reaches, the Kythera Prime Nexus waited for the arrival of an enemy unlike anything they had faced in millions of years of cyclical conquest. The void reaches stretched endlessly in all directions, a cosmic desert where no stars had burned for billions of years. Here, in the spaces between galactic arms, the human siege fleet arranged itself in formations that defied every principle of conventional warfare. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Inevitable Conclusion, watching tactical displays that showed the deployment of humanity's ultimate weapon. Around the flagship, 46 other siege vessels took positions in a complex, three-dimensional grid that spanned several light years. Each ship was a monument to human industrial capacity and military determination, mobile weapons platforms that carried enough firepower to shatter worlds. But the true scale of the operation became apparent when the stellar masses arrived. Gravitational anchor established, reported Commander Sarah Kim from the Physics Control Station. Dying Star Designation Alpha is locked in position. Stellar manipulation systems are responding normally. Through the viewports, the impossible sight of human engineering prowess became visible. A red giant star, its nuclear fires nearly exhausted, hung motionless in space where no star should exist. Massive gravitational manipulation platforms, each larger than most space stations, held the stellar mass in place through controlled distortions of space-time itself. Stellar masses beta and gamma approaching final positions, announced the navigation officer. All three stars will be in firing alignment in 47 minutes. Admiral Webb nodded grimly. Moving stars across interstellar distances was among humanity's most closely guarded capabilities, representing the absolute pinnacle of their technological achievement. The energy requirements alone exceeded the total power output of most civilizations, but humans had built an industrial infrastructure specifically to support such operations. Council observation ships are maintaining safe distance? Webb asked. Confirmed. Ambassador Zelix's vessel is positioned 5.7 light-years from the target zone, well outside the projected destruction radius. The Prime Nexus lay before them like a cancerous growth in the fabric of space itself. The Kythera stronghold defied easy description. 17 bioconstructed stations arranged around an artificial black hole, each station pulsing with malevolent life. The complex spanned nearly 2 astronomical units, making it larger than most planetary systems. Scanning results confirm intelligence estimates, reported the sensor specialist. Total Kythera population within the complex is approximately 497 billion entities. Defensive systems include gravity well generators, bioplasma projectors, and adaptive armor that spans the electromagnetic spectrum. Admiral Webb studied the tactical analysis with professional detachment. 500 billion lives would end in the next few hours, but he felt no hesitation. The Kythera had made their choice when they emerged from hibernation to consume galactic civilization. This was simply the conclusion of a war that began millions of years ago. Sir, called out the communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the Prime Nexus. It's unusual. On speakers. The voice that emerged from the communication systems was unlike anything the human crew had heard before. It carried harmonics that suggested multiple speakers talking in perfect synchronization, overlaid with subsonic frequencies that created an unsettling resonance. Unknown entities, the Kythera transmission began. You approach the Prime Nexus of the Eternal Swarm. Your presence is noted and deemed insignificant. Withdraw or be assimilated into the greater consciousness that encompasses all life. Admiral Webb stepped forward to respond personally. Kythera Prime Nexus. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Colonial Fleet. You are hereby notified that this facility has been designated for complete elimination. Surrender is not an option. Withdrawal is not acceptable. You have 10 minutes to release any non-Kythera entities you may have captured. A pause. Then, laughter, if such a sound could be called laughter when produced by collective consciousness spanning billions of minds. Humans, the swarm replied. We have observed your pathetic resistance in the outer systems. Your kinetic weapons are crude, but temporarily effective. Your tactics show promise. We look forward to assimilating your species and adding your aggression to our collective capabilities. You misunderstand the situation, Webb replied calmly. We're not here to fight you. We're here to end you. This isn't a battle. It's an extermination. Impossible. The swarm is eternal. We have survived the rise and fall of 1,000 galactic civilizations. Your young species cannot comprehend the scope of Admiral Webb. Cut the transmission. End communication. Begin final targeting procedures. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements precise despite the unprecedented nature of their task. No military force in galactic history had attempted to destroy a target of this magnitude using weapons of such devastating power. Stellar positions locked, Commander Kim reported. All 3 dying stars are aligned for optimal energy transfer. Gravitational focusing arrays are calibrated and ready. Fleet positions? All siege vessels are in designated firing positions. Defensive screens are active. All ships report ready for operation. Admiral Webb took a deep breath. Once he gave the order, there would be no stopping what followed. The gravitational forces they were about to unleash would ensure the complete destruction of everything within a light-year radius of the target. Initiate stellar compression sequence. The physics of what happened next defied easy explanation. Through carefully controlled gravitational manipulation, the human fleet began forcing the 3 dying stars to collapse beyond their natural limits. The stellar masses, already unstable, began compacting under artificially enhanced gravity until their nuclear fires reignited in violent stellar explosions. But these weren't natural supernovas. The explosions were focused, directed, and controlled through gravitational lenses that channeled the stellar energy into concentrated beams aimed directly at the Kythera Prime Nexus. The swarm's response was immediate and desperate. Bioplasma projectors that could vaporize planets opened fire on the human fleet. Gravity well generators attempted to disrupt the stellar manipulation systems. Millions of small biocraft launched from the stations in coordinated swarm attacks. None of it mattered. The human siege vessels weathered the Kythera assault with armor that had been designed specifically to survive stellar-level energy discharges. Their defensive systems reflected or absorbed weapons that would have destroyed any other ships in the galaxy. And their crews continued working with methodical precision as chaos erupted around them. First stellar pulse in 30 seconds, Commander Kim announced over the sounds of enemy fire impacting their shields. Admiral Webb watched the tactical display as 3 focused streams of stellar energy, each carrying the destructive power of an entire star's death, converged on the artificial black hole at the center of the Prime Nexus. The collision was visible across several star systems. When stellar energy designed to destroy worlds met the artificial singularity that powered the Kythera complex, the result was a gravitational shockwave that rippled through local space-time. The black hole, overwhelmed by energy input beyond its absorption capacity, began destabilizing. Direct hit confirmed, reported the sensor specialist. Artificial singularity is collapsing. Energy feedback is propagating throughout the Kythera station network. The 17 biostations around the dying black hole erupted in sequence as their power source failed catastrophically. Each station contained billions of Kythera entities, countless developing organisms, and the accumulated knowledge of millions of years of cyclical conquest. all of it vaporized in seconds as stellar fire consumed the complex. But the humans weren't finished. As the primary stations burned, Admiral Webb ordered the second phase of the operation. Launch penetrator probes. I want confirmation that nothing survives this action. Thousands of heavily armored probes shot through the expanding destruction zone, their sensors recording everything as they searched for any sign of surviving Kythera installations. The probes were designed to function in stellar-level energy fields, allowing them to conduct detailed reconnaissance even as space around them burned with the fury of dying stars. Probe telemetry confirms total facility destruction, the sensor specialist reported. No intact structures detected. No life signs.